Today I'm going to be making 5 different Food Wars dishes at the same time. I'm hosting a little dinner party later, and one of my friends said he has never really had Food Wars food, so I'm going to be making a bunch of it for him. I invited a few other friends over, so we're going to be having a Food Wars feast. Here is today's menu. Kake no tane, which is a fried fish, the transforming rice, the onion or charlie bean steak, the karage chicken wrap, and the gacha pork roast, which is something he has been requesting for a while. Now, because I want this dinner to go as smoothly as possible, and because I'm making quite a few dishes, I'm actually prepping a lot of this the day ahead. Dinner realistically is tomorrow night. This is just what chefs would do in the industry. We're not going to be making an entire Thanksgiving meal the day of Thanksgiving. That makes no sense. So the first thing I'm going to be making is the gacha pork roast, and we're going to be making this all the way through except for roasting it for its final roast. You'll see what I'm talking about later. I have my 4 potatoes going into my steamer basket. Yes, there's a steamer basket in there, you just can't see it. This is going to cook until they're nice and tender while we do other stuff. I will say this is not the easiest thing to do in a single day, so if you want to make 1, 2, maybe 3 of these dishes, consider doing some of this stuff a little bit ahead. If I were in a professional sized kitchen with plenty of refrigeration and tables, I could probably do this all in one day. But since most of us are cooking from home, it just doesn't make sense to try to do this in one day. Next, I need quite a bit of onion. There's onion on the charlie bean steak, there's onion on the gacha pork roast, and there's onion somewhere else. All I know is that I need a lot of onion. These 2 onions are going to be for the charlie bean steak, and these are going to be for the gacha pork roast, because we really don't need too much for the gacha pork roast. I'm going to cut these up just very nice and fine, very nice and small. Don't really need too much of a mince on this. We're going to cut up the charlie bean steak onions very differently. Well, not very differently, they just need to be smaller. I am going to be separating these. Oh my God, every time. Gacha pork roast onions, done. Oh, this next one's gonna be miserable. Now, the charlie bean steak onions are almost the same, but we are going to be mincing them further. The reason for this is this way, once you mince the onions, you're going to actually have the onion juices penetrate into the steak a bit better. Realistically, if you have a Roku or a food processor, you can just use that too. Okay, I'm done. Yep, that's enough of that. You just want to cut these nice and thin and mince them, and man, is it a pain. I am going to need quite a bit because I'm making a little extra steak because I think it's delicious. The reason why I'm putting it in this container now is because I don't want to marinate the steak too far ahead of time. You only need a couple of hours for this marinade, so it's going to be marinated first thing tomorrow morning. God, that's a lot of onion. Oh, yeah. Next is the chopped mushrooms for the gacha pork roast. Now, my friend George did request extra mushrooms, so I'm adding in like double the mushrooms. Unfortunately, my local market did not have oyster or king oyster mushrooms like Yukihira uses, so I'm just using some baby bells. Feel free to use whatever mushrooms you want, just make sure they're chopped up nice and small. Once your mushrooms are done, just put them in a container for later. The next bit of prep is my kake no tane for the fried fish. In Food Wars, Yukihira uses kake no tane, which is a bar snack in Japan, to create a breading to make fried fish during one of their challenges in school. The unfortunate thing is that he stole it from his teacher, but in our case, we just went out and bought a bunch of it. All you need to do is add it into your bag and crush the hell out of it. Now, one of the biggest pains is actually going to be making the banjiao that we have for the karage wrap. This is something that Yukihira makes during one of his summer breaks, and they used a banjiao, which is a Vietnamese style pancake that usually has some seafood in it. But because those are mostly made fresh and served immediately because they're nice and fried, it doesn't hold up as well during a buffet or a family style setting. So instead, I'm going to be using my version, which is in my cookbook, Any Bites. This instead uses a savory crepe, and that's what I'm going to be using to wrap the karage in. It's delicious. I love it. I think it's fun, and it's way easy. This is 180 milliliters of whole milk, 150 milliliters of water, 1 cup of all-purpose flour, a pinch of salt, some black pepper, 2 whole eggs, about 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and in this case, I'm adding furikake seasoning because I just wanted to change it up. I ended up adding in just a touch more water because I thought the batter was a little too thick. I am going to be cooking this all off today, so this way my crepes are ready to go, but I'm going to let my batter rest for about an hour in the fridge just so all the bubbles kind of disappear. Now, I've already run into a little bit of a problem, which is why I'm glad I chose to take a prep day in addition to an execution or a fire day. The reason for that is that my potatoes are done, but I need to start the stock for the chicken wings or the transforming rice. Oh God, this is going to be a mess. I have to put these in quick. Now, Yukihira does use chicken wings to make this stock, but you could just use chicken bones, pork bones, whatever really you want. You can do beef bones as well to make the aspic. I think he used chicken wings because they were available, but also because he wanted to be different. And admittedly, they do have a ton of gelatin. This is going to smoke out my house, so I'm going to let this just, you know, we're just going to smoke out the house today. See, it's a good thing people aren't here yet. Now, this stock is super simple to make. I'm taking all of my chicken wings and lightly searing them in this big stock pot. I want to get a little bit of color on these chicken wings right before I deglaze it with a bunch of sake. After adding in the sake, I'm throwing in 1 whole onion, then adding in enough water to help cover those chicken wings, followed by 1 giant tablespoon of dashi and a touch of sugar, some soy sauce, a little bit of mirin right on top of that, and then more water to cover. I'm gonna throw a lid on this and I'm gonna put this over on the stove to bring to a boil and then down to a simmer. And this has to reduce for like 3 or 4 hours because I made so much of it versus when I did the speed run version and I made like a serving of it. As I mentioned earlier, I have to get those potatoes cooling down so we can start mashing them up. As far as timing goes, the goal is to get these potatoes onto this tray. Oh my God, that worked so much better than I thought it was going to. Get them onto this tray so these can cool down while we're cooking up the mushrooms and the onions which go inside of this. I'm gonna start searing off the mushrooms and the onions to put into that, so that way that is not molten lava by the time we handle it. Get yourself a nice big saute pan, big old glob of butter. I don't even know how much butter that is, probably 2 tablespoons, you know? All right, that butter is melted. This is where I'm gonna throw in the mushrooms first because there's quite a bit. I'm gonna saute these and then probably saute the onions separately. We're gonna move this bad boy over just a little bit, bring these potatoes over. So this way, once these are done, I can start the onions and then, you know, just kind of keep it going, keep it moving. Just gonna make my life a little bit easier. Gonna take the potatoes that I'm peeling and throw them into here. There we go, that's smart. Potatoes, done. There we go, that feels good. Feels good to have that ready. Season the mushrooms first. We'll re-season this mixture over here later. Okay, once these are nice and cooked, we'll take these, put it right into our bowl, put this bad boy back on, but I'm not gonna add more butter to this because we added so much to there, so instead I'm just gonna use a little oil. Onions right into the pan, get those going. Give this a quick toss. I'm just gonna cook these until they're nice and soft. And optionally, I really like garlic, 2 cloves of garlic. It's not in the traditional recipe, but I think it adds a really, really nice touch. Season this. After a couple of minutes, these onions are ready to go. Put these right into our potato mixture, potato masher, get everything nice and incorporated. Here's the big thing with the gotcha pork roast. You can't wrap it with bacon until it's fully cooled down. This is why it actually is really great to make this a day ahead or even a couple of hours ahead and just have the log of potatoes sitting in the fridge. The reason why you don't want it hot is because the bacon starts to melt, like literally the fat starts to melt. Not gonna mush it up too much. It should be a little chunky. We're gonna take a spoon, give this a taste. It definitely is gonna taste like nothing because I didn't put enough salt. Yep. Barely, way more salt and some black pepper. It is a lot darker than my normal gotcha pork roast, but that's because George wanted extra mushrooms. So a little more salt and I think we're good to go. There's gonna be plenty of salt from the bacon too, so we have to consider that. I'm gonna let this cool down on the sheet tray just for a little bit because I think this is gonna be way too big of a gotcha pork roast and I don't think I can actually wrap my bacon around it. So we may not use all of this potato, but I won't know until I can start forming it and it's way too hot to form. So we're gonna let this hang out for like 15 minutes or so. So I cleaned up the kitchen a little bit and my gotcha pork roast filling is nice enough to handle. The one thing that I mentioned earlier is that this just might be too much filling. The only way I'll know is if I form it into its eventual log football shape. This might be okay, but what you realistically have to pay attention to is how big the bacon strips are. I think I'm gonna take just a little bit off of it, but it looks so nice. This looks really, really good. It looks pretty true to the show. I think we'll keep it. We'll just use extra bacon. And you know what? If George wants to take more home, he can take it home. We'll wrap this with bacon tomorrow. This way the potato doesn't get weird at all. I don't have to worry about the bacon getting weird in the fridge. And then I can actually tighten this potato quite a bit by wrapping it in this plastic wrap. This is gonna be kind of like tightening a sausage. It's the weirdest reference, but that's the best way I can describe it. Make sure it's fully sealed. And then this can cool down into some kind of a shape. And I think this is gonna be good. So I'm gonna take a little bit more plastic wrap. This way it doesn't like bleed out because it's so heavy. Get this nice and tight. This is going to hang out in the fridge until tomorrow, which is really nice. Like I said, you could make this a day ahead, 3 days ahead, and it'll probably be fine. And then just make it when you're ready to make it. I don't know why I'm rubbing this the way I'm rubbing it, but it feels kind of nice. To make life easy, I'm gonna put this on a very small sheet tray, or you can just use a plate. This is going in the fridge. See this thing tomorrow. Now at this point, realistically, there's only like 3 more prep things to do, and that's getting me really caught up for tomorrow's execution. Most of you may not know this, but one of my favorite positions I've ever worked in big hotels was actually banquets. I loved trying to make dinner for 1,200 people in a single night with a small team. It felt really accomplishing to be able to do that. It was the coolest feeling to be cooking for 3 or 4 or 5 days sometimes and being able to see all of the food go out properly. It was awesome. So next time you guys go to a hotel for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, if you're traveling, just know there's a lot that goes into everything that kitchen staff does. Now we have to sit here and make crepes for about 25 to 30 minutes, and this is entirely too hot to make crepes. I'm starting off with just a small amount of batter to get a feel for it, and I feel like this is still very hot. It's okay, I'm making them slightly thicker. They're not gonna be a true crepe because a true crepe is very thin, and the biggest reason for that is that I want you to be able to roll some of that karaage in here without it falling apart. This is gonna cook for literally 30 or 40 seconds on each side. This doesn't need to cook for very long. You don't really want a ton of color on your crepe. And then this goes right onto here. Crepe number 1 is done. And these are the crepes. I was able to get about 8 orders of crepes, which is good because there's only 5 of us eating, so there's gonna be a couple of extra for everyone. I'm gonna let these cool down to room temperature before I fully wrap them and then throw them in the fridge. But realistically, if you made these ahead of time, you could freeze these for up to like 2 or 3 weeks and they're gonna be still really, really good. Now the chicken, the karaage, I'm gonna do something really simple with this one. I have a reduced priced chicken because it's supposed to expire in 3 days. It'll be fine, don't worry. It's a very Yukihira thing to do. And I'm gonna trim out just some of the fat from the chicken and then cut these into nice big chunky pieces. So this way they're like 2-inch pieces. This goes in the bowl. You heard chicken? Hi. Once the chicken is cut, the only thing I'm marinating this with is a secret weapon, and that is suyu. This is a Japanese-based broth. You can usually use it for tempura or soba or whatever you really want, but it is very concentrated, so I'm not gonna really need a ton of this. I'm gonna add just a very small amount, which is maybe like a 1/4 cup, 1/3 of a cup, just enough to kind of coat all of the chicken. And because it's so strong, this is gonna marinate really nicely overnight. Oh, it smells so good. I love the smell of suyu. This is ready. Realistically, I'm pretty happy with what I've done today. There's still a ton to do tomorrow before dinner, like literally 6 more hours or so of work, because I want everything to be ready at one time. The only thing that's not done today is that broth, and that has to go for another couple of hours. So I'm just gonna show you what that looks like tomorrow. It is day 2 and my aspic is ready. This is for the transforming rice, and you can see how nicely it has actually solidified. This is ready to go for the transforming rice. Unfortunately, I forgot the umeboshi, so I had to send Rachel all the way to Iwajimaya, which is like 45 minutes each way, to go get umeboshi for this umeboshi rice we need for this specific dish, because I know if we didn't have it, you guys would call me out on it. And if you want to keep my wife employed, you should pick up your copy of Annie Bites, my cookbook, and Quest for the Best Japan, where I explore Japan and all of its anime food. You can pick up both of these on my website at CHEFPK.com. If you head there right now, you can actually get the same early bird special that the Kickstarter backers got. That's both books at a discounted price than you normally would get them. Annie Bites is filled with some of your favorite Food Wars recipes, including this gacha pork roast that I'm making today. It has a few dozen of your favorite recipes spanning across anime and video games, so make sure you pick up a copy and start playing with your food. Quest for the Best features all of my adventures throughout Japan on a series I filmed last year. You can get your hands on this very special book where I explore amazing anime food all throughout Tokyo. Not only can you read really fun, amazing adventures, but I did include custom recipes based on the things that I ate out in Tokyo. So if you want to pick up these books and keep my wife employed so she can help me make these videos, head over to CHEFPK.com and pick up a copy of each book today. That's CHEFPK.com for both Annie Bites and Quest for the Best Tokyo. Now, let's finish prepping because we have 5 hours before everyone arrives, and I'm really paranoid about not having everything ready. So I'm starting early. Now I made a full prep list for what I need to do today. This is slightly different than my prep list that I had made yesterday. Normally in a professional kitchen, you're gonna have multiple prep lists throughout your day. This might be something from your starting prep list for things you need to get made that minute, followed by prep you might have to make on the line because it just gets so busy. So in this case, I already started a bunch of rice for 2 of the dishes, the European steak and the transforming rice. But the transforming rice, we have to add the umeboshi, so that's gonna be slightly different. 2 things I have to do right now are wrap the gacha pork roast with a bunch of bacon and marinate the steaks for the European with all of our onion. This is much easier to do, so I'm gonna leave the gacha pork roast for a second. Now in the anime, Yukihira uses a very cheap cut of meat to try to tackle Nikumi's A5 Wagyu. Now in my case, I'm not actually using a super cheap cut of meat, and that's because I wanted to treat my friends to something special. I'm just using a simple flat iron, which isn't too cheap and not too expensive. I think it's one of the more middle cost steaks, but it's also one of my favorite. It has a ton of flavor. It's pretty fatty, and it can be a little tough if it's not cooked properly, but we're gonna try to tenderize this with all the onion just like Yukihira does. One thing Yukihira also does is he scores the meat. So this way, all of those onions can go into the steak itself and really start tenderizing everything. So we're just gonna give it a nice score all the way through, making sure I do both sides on all of the meat. And this is what my steak looks like right before I throw it into the onion bath. One thing of note when you're adding the onions to this, if you're making this at home, is to make sure you put onions on the top and bottom of the steak so it's fully covered. Once the steaks are fully covered with onions, I'm gonna let this marinate in the fridge until about 4 o'clock, which is about 4.5 hours from now. Now we get to wrap the gotcha pork roast. I found this massive pack of thick cut bacon from a local company called Hills here in Oregon. I'm not gonna need all of this. Well, I hope I don't need all of this. The big thing though is that this is really thick bacon. Look at how thick this slice is. It's really great for breakfast, but not great for rolling gotcha pork roast. So we're gonna give it our best shot. This thing is nice and chilled now though. This is really easy to handle, so I'm gonna reform it just a little bit because it is a little flat on the bottom. Gotcha pork roast does take a little over an hour to cook, so we do have to time this right because we don't want a cold potato center. Nope, nobody wants that. That's gross. Now to wrap this, I do have to lay the bacon to where it kind of sits on top of each other. Let's see if I can even make this happen. So I'm gonna have to double up on certain parts of it. We'll make this work. This thing is so big, it's giving me problems wrapping it. Let's go ahead and try to turn this because I want this to be the bottom. There we go. We got there. This gigantic pork roast. My Lord. George, I hope you're happy, buddy. I still have to truss this, or rather wrap this in butcher's twine so it holds together when it bakes. Butcher's twine is definitely a must when you're making a gotcha pork roast because this can open up while it bakes. So I'm gonna be wrapping this a few times, not too tight though, because what I have found is that if it's too tight, you may end up losing some of the potato, like it actually starts spilling out. Before I put this in the fridge, I'm gonna throw in some sprigs of rosemary that I stole from a neighbor's garden. If you're watching this, I apologize, but it was just right there. This is going to go on a wire rack that I'm gonna spray down. I know it seems redundant because there's so much fat on the bacon, but trust me, you want a little bit of spray. This goes into the fridge until it's ready to roast. The next thing I have to do is prep my fish, and unfortunately, the place where I get my fish carries amazing fish, but they don't remove the pin bones because a lot of people feel like, oh, you can just eat the pin bones. You don't eat pin bones. Do you want to see what a pin bone looks like? This is a pin bone. Do you want to eat this? It's a tiny little needle of death that exists in the fish. Don't serve that to people. Once all the pin bones are removed, I'm going to remove the skin from this trout. Okay, again, Alf, this is for you. There, ready? There you go, there's your fish, good boy. I'm cutting this fish into big fish stick sizes. This is what my fish looks like when I cut it. So this way I can easily bread it and deep fry it. This piece is just gonna get fried like this. Once the fish is cut, this is going into a container to stay nice and fresh. Add in a touch of oil just to help preserve it a bit. No, get up, do not lick my knife. This is, I don't know if I'm making dinner or just battling my cat. And now this fish is ready to deep fry. After that last bit of prep I just did, it's actually been almost an hour and a half. I've cleaned up the kitchen, I have everything more or less spotless, and I pulled out everything that I think I need, including the dishes to plate up this feast. This is gonna be a lot of work. There's quite a bit to do. So the first thing I need to do is eat this Kit Kat bar that Rachel got me. It's a cookies and cream version. I love Kit Kats, and this is what this looks like. You know, you gotta enjoy yourself every now and then. Delicious. First things first, this goes into the oven, 350 for about an hour and a half. Now, while that gotcha pork roast is in the oven, I'm actually going to be making the sauce on the side. I know it seems a little bit weird to make sauces now, but typically in a restaurant, you'll make sauces like 30 to 40 minutes, maybe a little bit longer before opening happens. This way they're nice and warm and they can just sit in this beautiful bain-marie that I have back here. Yes, I'm trying to utilize this kitchen as best as I can. The gotcha pork roast sauce is relatively simple. It's 2 parts red wine. So in this case, I'm using about 8 ounces of red wine to 1 part sake. This is just cooking sake, so about 4 ounces of cooking sake. The rest of this red wine is going to be for the Chalipin steak, so I'm still gonna need this later. And Yukihira also uses a couple tablespoons of soy sauce to give it this really, really nice, deep, salty flavor. So I'm gonna put about 2 tablespoons of soy sauce right into my wine reduction. This is going to reduce until it gets a little bit syrupy, and then we're gonna finish it with butter. Now I'm gonna be bouncing in between each dish just because I have have to utilize my time properly with the space that I have. So while this syrup is working, I'm gonna be cracking eggs for the transforming rice. This is going to be the top, like the curdled eggs or the egg curd that sits on top of the rice, and it's just gonna be nicely soft scrambled. I'm doing about 8 eggs for this. It's gonna be a good amount just because there's 5 of us eating. I'm just gonna break down these eggs until they're nicely scrambled. I'm not gonna season them yet at all. I'm gonna season them right before I'm ready to cook them. These eggs are ready to scramble when I'm ready to make this transforming rice dish, which is gonna be close to the end of everything. The other thing I may as well get ready now while this is reducing is the beautiful aspic for the transforming rice. This just needs to be cut into little cubes, and this is ready to go too. We'll scrape some of the fat off at the top of this. Once I scrape it nice and clean, this is where I'll take my knife and I'll cut it into little tiny cubes. I'm just gonna throw this back in the fridge. Now this is reducing pretty nicely. Needs to go a little bit longer. And before I finish this with butter, I'm gonna take a little bit more butter and put it into a small pot, the world's cutest saucepan. And I'm gonna melt this for hollandaise, which is going to be for the deep fried fish later. This sauce is pretty reduced. I'm gonna turn this off and just let it hang out for just a second. And this is where I'm going to start adding quite a bit of cold butter to start mounting this sauce. I like to add quite a bit up front just to make sure it gets started. Get that butter, oh God, there's sauce everywhere now. Get the butter incorporated. This is going to mount the sauce with butter, which should give it a really, really nice finish. Now, what's interesting is that both the gotcha pork roast and the chalipin steak are very, very similar with how the sauces are made. The biggest difference from what I gather is that the gotcha pork roast has sake, where the chalipin steak has soy sauce, wine, and butter, but you're using the red wine to deglaze the pan. The pan that's gonna be cooked with all of the beef and the onions, so it gets all that flavor. It's really nice. A little bit more butter. It's really important that the heat is off when you're adding the butter, so this way the butter doesn't break. I hear my butter boiling over here. I'm gonna turn this off. That butter doesn't need to be too hot for the hollandaise. And after a few minutes, this sauce is pretty much ready to go. I just wanna give it a taste, make sure it has enough salt from the, because the only salt is from the soy sauce, really. That's good, that's delicious. Now this sauce is going into a ball mason jar because I don't have any metal containers, so I'm gonna pour this over the sink though. Mason jars are a good alternative for this because you can boil mason jars, and that's how canning works or jarring works. So this is gonna sit in my hot water bath over here. The hollandaise sauce is for the kake no tane fried fish, but this hollandaise is a little bit different. A traditional hollandaise is egg yolks, clarified butter, and whatever seasonings you want. Usually a touch of lemon juice. You can throw in some tarragon or whatever the case is. But because my hollandaise has to sit out for a dinner party, I'm gonna be making what I like to call a banquet hollandaise, something that can stand the test of time, and that test of time might be an hour or more. Normally you won't see a hollandaise just sitting on a buffet because it can overcook, it can curdle, it gets really gross. So a banquet hollandaise is gonna be 2 whole eggs that I'm gonna be heating up almost like a custard because I'm adding in 2 ounces of heavy whipping cream to this. Don't worry, this is also going to get some butter, but I'm gonna be cooking this down just a little bit first. I'm gonna add some black pepper, pinch of salt, and I'm gonna keep whisking this until it starts to thicken, and then we're gonna be adding in our melted butter to finish it. The trick is just to keep this low and pay attention to it because it can burn very quickly. So after a few minutes, the custard has thickened up. This is where we're gonna take it off the heat, and I'm gonna slowly add in some melted butter. This is just gonna really, really make it nice and creamy, and you really don't need too much melted butter because this is gonna be such a rich sauce. I'm adding in about 3 tablespoons of melted butter to this. The big part of making any kind of a custard is just to constantly stir it so it doesn't overcook. Now I'm going to add in a little bit of lemon juice. Probably gonna zest some lemon in there too, but we'll see what it tastes like with just lemon juice. More salt, more lemon, but it's super rich, really buttery. You can taste the cream. It's just really nice. It's just a really nice sauce. All right, this is ready to go. I'm gonna put it in my container. Gotcha pork roast is in. We have 2 sauces made. I have oil heating up for deep frying everything because we're deep frying 2 different things. Now I'm going to be making all of my steak for the chalipin steak. The house is gonna get smoked out, and it's gonna be a fun time. I'm gonna start searing off this steak, trying to remove a lot of the onions. Oh, that smells so good though. Steaks have been de-onioned, season them pretty generously with salt, then black pepper. The onions we're gonna keep for just a minute later. Those have to be sauteed with all the beef stuff. Re-season these steaks because we didn't season the other side. And this is gonna get moved to the other stove for now. So now the steak is working, the onions have to get cooked after that. I've already prepped the umeboshi for the rice. Hollandaise sauce is done. I have to make the batter for the fried fish, which is super, super simple. The kake no tane is just dipped in egg and then into that kake no tane that we crushed up. Yukihira didn't have flour for that challenge, so we're not using flour for this one. All right, about half an hour before everyone arrives, or should arrive. Once that happens, it's gonna get a little rowdy, so please excuse the noise, but it's a dinner party. I'm gonna go check on that steak and see how those are doing. I might need to flip them. Oh, that's some nice color. That one doesn't have any color. That one's looking okay. That one's a little char. I'm gonna move this like that. And hopefully I can get some even color on these steaks. Now the question is do I start deep frying? Because we're 30 minutes from dinner and I don't know if I want to deep fry that quickly because deep frying is pretty fast. It's only going to take me about 10 minutes to deep fry everything. I think instead we start plating up a couple of the sides we had made. One of the sides is a ramen slaw. Yes, you heard me correctly. It's a nice coleslaw with some mirin, with some soy sauce and with some vinegar. And then we're going to crush up about a half a bag of ramen, putting that sucker right in there. It gives it a nice crunch. You don't want to put it in too early, otherwise the ramen gets really, really soggy. So I'm just gonna give this a nice toss. We're gonna put this in a little bowl over here. This is the beautiful ramen slaw. Look at that, delicious. It's one of my favorites. Check the steak over here. Oh yeah, give those a flip. Look at those. The onions do provide a little bit of caramelization on the meat itself. You can see here, it's a little darker than I would like, but kind of what happens with the onion. I'm gonna turn this down now, so this way it doesn't cook too much, but this should be okay. The oil is heating up as well. That should be ready to go. I'm gonna continue to plate up sides. The other side that I had made is just a nice marinated cucumber salad. This is just some really thinly sliced cucumber that I marinated with soy sauce, mirin, rice vinegar, sake, sesame seed, and a bit of sriracha. This is the cucumber salad, delicious. Now I also made a very spicy, tangy mayo. This is for the karage. That's already plated up. And I have a ton of green onions that I used a furikake jar to store them in, so that looks really cute. These two are also gonna be part of our sides. So the steak is done, but I want to rest the meat before I cut into it. So I'm gonna put that on here. But now I can make the sauce. These are I'm actually just gonna let these hang out at room temp right over here for about 10 minutes so they don't keep cooking. This looks a little crusty, which is kind of unfortunate. I know I'm supposed to deglaze this like in the anime, but I'm gonna scrape some of this off just so it's not super burnt. Let's deglaze this bad boy. To deglaze this, we're using the red wine and I believe soy sauce and butter. I'm gonna be scraping this to get all of the fond off of the bottom of this. I'm gonna bring this over here and we'll let this reduce for about 5 minutes. So I already messed up the jalapeno steak, but I don't think it's gonna make too big of a difference. You can see over on the stove right now, I had to put the onions in before the sauce. I have to cook down the onions with some butter, saute those up until they're nice and soft, and then we're gonna take the onions out and put the sauce back in and then finish the sauce. This is why I like to be a little early with things because sometimes I mess up. Everybody messes up. It's fine. While those onions are cooking, I'm gonna move this soy sauce over there. We're gonna start deep frying some chicken. But first, we have to look at this roast. Oh yeah, baby. Look at that roast, delicious, fantastic. I've made this too many times in this month, but I think this one is also beautiful, but it's just gonna go back in for another like 5 minutes. I'm gonna bring over my very hot oil, place this here. I have this at about 380 degrees, a little bit higher than I normally would because I'm gonna be putting in a bunch of food into it. And because we're cooking at home, the oil can cool down as you add food to it, unlike an industrial fryer. Now for the karage that I'm gonna be frying up right now, this is the karage that I marinated yesterday with some suyu. This is going to go into a mixture of 2 parts cornstarch, 1 part flour, and some salt and pepper. This is the same oil that I'm gonna have to use for the fish too, but I wanna cook the fish last. The chicken is gonna hold up way better than the fish. I also have to keep an eye on those onions over there, so hopefully everything works out. Let's go chicken time. Remember, I have to get all the food done, but I still have to plate everything up. I'm shaking off any excess flour cornstarch mixture. I'm gonna take this glove off, the one that had the chicken, so I can go stir those onions. All right, go back to that chicken. I need a spider. This is what a spider is, this little strainer thing. I'm gonna take a look at these. Oh yeah, baby. Well, that's fine. Check on the onions again. These onions look ready to go, but I can't take them off the burner because I'm dealing with this, so I'm just gonna turn this off for a second. I'm gonna toss all this together. Oh, thank you. That is so good. This is the juiciest nectarine I've had in a long time.
Peach.
Oh, it is a peach. Oh, that chicken's looking good. Almost golden. This needs another 5 minutes or so, maybe 6. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna go deal with the onions. I'm gonna take all of these onions out. Look at those onions. That is gorgeous. Now I can put that sauce back in and finish this. Our chicken is also done, the first batch of it anyways. This is going to go onto this sheet tray with a little bit of paper towel to absorb any excess oil. I'm gonna season this with just a little bit of salt, and then I'm gonna pop this into the oven to keep warm. Now, because I don't think this can actually keep up on this stove, I'm gonna move the oil over to the big stove, so this way the oil stays nice and hot. 12 minutes before 5, not confident we're gonna finish this on time. I'm gonna bring the rest of this over to the fryer and hope that this fries relatively quickly because we still have to do all of the fish and the egg and all the vegetables. I also made vegetables, cauliflower and roasted asparagus. This is gonna just go in the oven to keep warm because it's already roasted. I pre-roasted it. I'm just finishing the sauce for the jalapeno steak over here. A little bit of butter in the pan. Get this stirred up. I'm gonna actually turn this off. And all I'm trying to do is melt this into here. This sauce is gonna be super rich, which is really, really nice. It's gonna be salty and fatty, and it's gonna cut through all the onions. This is one of my favorite dishes too. Once the sauce is done, this is going to go in another mason jar to keep warm. Whose idea was it to do 5 Food Wars dishes in a single day?
7 minutes.
7 minutes? It's not enough time, chef. Sauces are done, which is awesome. I gotta fry the rest of the chicken. All right, chicken is going. Now I can start breading all of the fish. Egg wash, ready. Take one of these bad boys, throw it into our egg. Then it goes right into our kake no tane. I'm just gonna go ahead and bread all of this fish right now. I'm kind of sad I cut up all this kake no tane. I thought I was gonna need way more, and now I'm gonna have extra that I can't use. All right, this fish is breaded, ready to fry. All right, pork roast coming out. This has to cool at room temp for about 25 minutes before I cook it, cut it. It's already cooked before I cut it. Then we're ready. This is coming together. That chicken is almost done, which means we can fry this fish. Season this. See, it's 5 o'clock. My friends are literally here at 5. I swear they're not here. Oh, I thought I heard the door knock. It's like they usually are sometimes like sitting outside waiting till 5. Okay, chicken is out. Fish goes in. We're gonna finish up the fish and then we're gonna start plating up. Hi guys, how's it going? What'd you bring?
Mini cheesecakes.
Mini cheesecakes? Hell yeah. Karage is done. Fish is done. We got to make eggs and plate everything up. I'm going to be taking over for just a second because there's so much to do. To make the umeboshi rice for the jalapeno steak, I'm just taking a bunch of rice and throwing in chopped up umeboshi. This is when I'm going to start slicing all of that jalapeno steak that I had prepped, put it into this massive bowl, and then put all of those cooked onions right on top. That thing looks epic. Now it's time to cook off some of the eggs that I need for the yukihira transforming rice. This is super simple. It's just scrambled with salt and pepper. Scramble those off nicely and then start plating it up onto the rice. I added half of my aspic to the eggs and half to the rice just to make sure it's distributed evenly. Put all of that on top of the rice and then garnish it with some furikake. Next is to plate up all of these vegetables that I had made as well, followed by all of that beautiful fried fish and karage. Make sure I grab my sauces and then start plating up my gacha pork roast. This is super simple. I just have to take off all the string, put this onto a giant plate and pour over that beautiful sauce and give it a little garnish. This thing is ready to eat. Okay, I think we got everything on the table. And after 2 days of work and many hours, we have a Food Wars feast. I made way too much food for 5 people, and so I think we have enough to-go boxes for everybody to enjoy. We're just gonna start eating now, and please feel free to join us. Wagario! George wants the gacha pork roast first.
Food is the best piece because it has the most bacon.
It does have the most bacon. This is very difficult to cut. When they had it in the show, it was like this perfect sphere.
Yeah.
In the cartoon show?
Yeah, in the cartoon show. Marissa, would you like a small piece?
A very small piece.
Yeah, chicken's good.
Oh, the karage? Yeah.
The karage was when you tried to help that smoke.
Yes,
right?
yes. So the idea with the chicken is you take one of these crates, which are not super warm.
Yes.
You put a couple of pieces of chicken in it, like a little taco, and then a little bit of this sauce, like a little karage taco. And then you take some of this slaw. That's the one. This is so much food.
Bacon good.
Right?
It's from Hills. They're local. Like Chris, you cook a lot. Like when you cook so much, you don't want to eat.
Yes.
I'm at that point where I just don't want to eat.
God, I'm already thirsty. The cucumber's good enough too.
Normally it's served with a Vietnamese pancake called a banjao, but yeah. But the problem I have with banjao is they have to be really crispy and like fresh when they're made, and so they don't hold up as well.
Gandalf, do you see this monster?
All right, I'm gonna have some steak. I am already also getting full. Maybe we should invite the neighbors over.
They would
Or
like it.
just take it to their door. Don't even give them an option.
Oh yeah, this is for you. Don't cook for 8 days. Mad.
This probably isn't a good time to bring it up. but we got cheesecake.
Ooh.
I'll be eating some cheesecake.
I like some cheesecake.
Really cool cheesy.
Is gotcha pork roast everything you thought it would be? I put extra mushroom for you.
Yeah.
Good job, babe.
So good.
I like how that karaage came out, to be honest. I was worried because the oil kept like lowering in temp, but it held up pretty well.
I think that might be my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet you it's really good with that.
Mm.
More than this.
Nobody touched the veggie?
Yeah.
I did.
It's just there.
Cucumber.
Yes.
It's just there for the
It's
color.
just there for the color.
I have been munching on it.
This is my favorite one.
This rice is really good.
This is really good too. I like that if you take the pickled plum and put it in here, it's really good too.
It's a problem because I've already had some.
You smell it?